When someone speaks of conspiracy theories, a smirk often appears on faces, an instinctive reaction to explanations that diverge from the familiar and accepted. But what if these theories were more than paranoid delusions or indulgence in superstition? What if they were a faint whisper of truth beneath the deafening noise of concealment? What if they were supported by evidence, testimonies, and leaks presented at conferences and explored in documentaries, yet withheld from mainstream media so the public remains unaware that illness has become a manufactured product? Who operates behind the scenes of this industry, and why? What connects the atmosphere to seeds, chemtrails to cancer, and Monsanto to the global health crisis? What if the conspiracy theory resembles that man who warned his village of an impending storm, only to be mocked, until the cyclone arrived and turned everything upside down? Though we now live in an era of accessible information, the search for truth amidst a flood of lies and misdirection is like diving for pearls at the bottom of a river. Some questions, simple as they may seem, remain unanswered, or at best, are met with responses far more complex than the questions themselves. For instance, what do we eat? What do we breathe? And why do we suffer from sudden or chronic illnesses even as we believe ourselves to be in an age of medical and technological advancement? Why do diseases proliferate, medications fail to cure, and our immune systems quietly crumble? In the past, illness posed a constant threat to human life. This should have changed, especially given the tremendous progress medicine has made in recent decades. Yet reality suggests the opposite. Humanity's health is in alarming decline, and the catalog of diseases grows ever longer. You may be astonished to learn that, throughout history, mankind has only ever eradicated one virus, smallpox, which was officially declared extinct by the World Health Organization in the year 1980, after a global vaccination campaign that spanned many years. Though this was hailed as a historic triumph in medicine and epidemiology, it raises urgent questions about other viruses and bacterial epidemics: plague, cholera, tuberculosis, anthrax, the Spanish flu, HIV/AIDS, Ebola, avian flu, swine flu, COVID-19, and more. And what of chronic illnesses such as cancer, diabetes, asthma, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, and liver disease? The list of persistent viruses and bacteria is long, and these can reawaken or mutate at any time, growing deadlier than before. Meanwhile, a similarly extensive list of chronic diseases continues to defy medical intervention. Here emerges a deeply troubling question. Is this inability to cure simply the result of natural scientific limitations? Or is it intentional, calculated, and orchestrated? If it were merely natural, why does illness today appear not as a biological accident, but as a project, an invisible instrument to shape a world governed by transnational interests? A world where health is no longer the goal, but a tool in the hands of capitalism, draining individuals psychologically, physically, and financially to fill the coffers of pharmaceutical giants and serve the agendas of the elites who shape humanity's fate. In recent years, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, it has become increasingly evident that the global health system does not work in the interest of the people. The World Health Organization, instead, seems to serve the agendas of the pharmaceutical conglomerates. In this entanglement of politics, economics, and strategic interests, the boundary between healing and profit becomes blurred, transforming disease in some cases into a product, marketable, manageable, and yes, manufacturable. Otherwise, why has cancer not been eradicated despite the billions of dollars invested? Why are harmful food ingredients, which scientists have repeatedly proven dangerous, still permitted? Why is alternative and natural medicine marginalized, ridiculed, or dismissed as superstition? And why do certain outbreaks emerge at suspiciously convenient political moments? More importantly, could there exist powerful entities, armed with wealth, media influence, and cutting-edge technologies, capable of deliberately spreading disease to serve objectives ranging from profit generation to population control and socio-political manipulation? Within this context, we must consider intelligence reports, scientific research, and testimonies from within the medical establishment itself that point to systemic flaws too grave to be mere accidents or incompetence. In her seminal work, The Truth About the Drug Companies, published in 2004, Dr. Marcia Angell, an American physician and professor of social medicine at Harvard University, exposed the inner workings of the global pharmaceutical industry. Behind the closed doors of corporate giants, she revealed a world devoid of scientific ethics or humanitarian concern, governed solely by the logic of market forces and grand investment interests. These pharmaceutical companies, she wrote, deliberately conceal negative trial results that reveal a drug to be either ineffective or dangerously harmful. At the same time, they exaggerate positive outcomes by manipulating statistics or designing biased clinical trials that create the illusion of efficacy, when in reality the drug is nothing more than a commercial product. Moreover, these corporations exploit legal and regulatory loopholes to expand their influence. Rather than channeling funds into authentic medical research, they invest billions in aggressive marketing campaigns, lavish gifts and conferences to sway physicians, and manipulation of public health policy. Dr. Angell also revealed that many of the laws regulating the pharmaceutical market were crafted by lobbyists representing these very corporations, rewriting the definition of illness itself. The patient is no longer viewed as a human being to be cured, but as a long-term client to be maintained in a state of dependency, never fully healed. In this model, disease is transformed from a medical condition into a sustainable economic enterprise. Pharmaceutical companies have become instruments for reshaping human consciousness and our relationship with our bodies. These companies possess vast financial power and dominate international institutions and media networks that distract populations, keeping them in the dark about what is happening within their own physiology. It is worth noting that drug companies spend nearly 3 times as much on marketing as they do on scientific research and development. As a result, many so-called new drugs, registered with the FDA as innovative treatments, are in fact only minor variations of existing ones, repurposed within a system that turns physicians into brand ambassadors for ineffective products. These same companies also fund academic and medical journals, publishing selective findings in curated environments that reframe knowledge itself, rendering these journals marketing arms rather than neutral repositories of truth. Their financial relationships extend to universities and research institutions, where grants and honoraria buy influence and favorable coverage. All of this confirms a chilling reality. The pharmaceutical industry has evolved into a profit-driven marketing juggernaut, wielding enough power to shape research outcomes, sway doctors, compromise scientific publications, and influence regulatory agencies. Many drugs, therefore, offer no real health benefit. They are sold as commodities, marketed through sleek campaigns and carefully engineered influence. One of the most notorious examples is the Purdue Pharma scandal. In 1996, the company released OxyContin, a powerful opioid prescribed for severe and chronic pain unresponsive to conventional analgesics. Purdue deployed a vast network of influential physicians and promotional tactics, including paid seminars and sponsored travel, to convince the public that the drug was non-addictive. In time, this was revealed to be a calculated deception. Thousands became addicted to OxyContin within weeks. Some began crushing and snorting or injecting the pills, leading to an explosion in overdose deaths. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, hundreds of thousands of lives were lost to opioid overdoses, many of which began with legal prescriptions. The CDC documented that 45% of opioid addiction cases originated with an official medical prescription. By 2020, Purdue Pharma admitted before the U.S. Department of Justice to encouraging illicit drug use and deceiving public health authorities. The Sackler family, who owned the company, faced widespread moral and legal condemnation. A financial settlement exceeding $7 billion was reached. Notably, the Sacklers, an American Jewish family, were once considered among the wealthiest in the United States, with a peak net worth surpassing $13 billion. Before their fall from grace, they were celebrated patrons of the arts, donating vast sums to institutions such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Oxford University, Yale, and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Notably, this medical scandal was brought to light in 2021 through an HBO documentary series titled The Crime of the Century, based on the investigative book Empire of Pain by American journalist Patrick Radden Keefe. Another illustrative case is the Tamiflu scandal. Tamiflu, the trade name for oseltamivir, was developed by Gilead Sciences and marketed globally by Roche as a treatment and preventative measure against seasonal influenza. The drug received approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in 1999 and gained widespread recognition during the 2009 swine flu pandemic, where it was touted as an effective medication capable of mitigating flu complications. However, in 2014, the Cochrane collaboration released a comprehensive review of dozens of studies, concluding that Tamiflu only reduced flu symptoms by an average of 17 hours, with no strong evidence supporting its effectiveness. Moreover, many of the drug's purported benefits lacked scientific substantiation. It was also found to have psychological and neurological side effects, particularly in children and adolescents, including hallucinations, aggressive behavior, sleep disturbances, and in some cases, suicidal thoughts. Peter Doshi, a researcher writing in the British Medical Journal, described the scandal as emblematic of how a drug can be aggressively marketed with the backing of the World Health Organization and regulatory bodies, despite the absence of compelling efficacy data. This revelation all but confirms that nothing is truly beyond the grasp of profit and commerce, not even human pain. Illness has been privatized, health reformulated as a marketable commodity, manufactured, promoted, and managed according to the logic of supply and demand, not according to ethics or human dignity. When we consider that the global pharmaceutical market now exceeds $1 trillion, we begin to understand. Illness is no longer a catastrophe. It is an opportunity. The patient is no longer a human being, but a long-term client in a business model where the measure of a drug's success is not in its healing power, but in how consistently the client remains dependent on it. This reflects a chilling new doctrine: managing illness, not curing it. Today's major health systems are operated through intricate alliances involving pharmaceutical companies, insurance brokers, and lobbying firms. These actors dictate the direction of scientific research and what treatments are approved. Meanwhile, there is a stark decline in support for preventive medicine and natural therapies. Even when such approaches are effective, they are sidelined because they do not yield high profits or create long-term customers. As a result, they are dismissed, undermined, and labeled as pseudoscience, while billion-dollar medications are marketed as modern miracles. And this manipulation extends beyond drugs. It includes medical devices, diagnostics, vaccinations, and consultations. Every step in the therapeutic journey has been transformed into a revenue stream. This commodification of human suffering is what American thinker Noam Chomsky once referred to when he said, "The worst model of savage capitalism is when the human body itself becomes a consumable object." Adding to the disturbing picture is the pharmaceutical industry's active role in disease mongering. the invention or promotion of new diseases. This term was coined by Australian journalist, physician, and researcher Ray Moynihan in 2002. An article titled "How Drug Companies Turn Us All into Patients." It refers to the exaggeration of natural symptoms or psychological states and redefining them as medical conditions requiring treatment, all to expand pharmaceutical markets. In essence, the goal is simple: convince healthy people that they are potential patients and persuade them to consume medications they never truly needed. One example is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, whose diagnostic criteria have been so broadly defined that millions of children are now labeled with the condition based on vague and subjective standards. Another is the medicalization of menopause, once a natural phase of aging, now rebranded as a condition requiring long-term hormonal therapy. A similar pattern is seen with testosterone deficiency syndrome, promoted by pharmaceutical firms as a disease, despite the fact that decreasing testosterone is a natural consequence of aging. In addition to cases such as irritable bowel syndrome, social anxiety disorder, and premenstrual symptoms, many of which are artificially constructed conditions, entirely new multi-billion-dollar markets have been created. The result is a population gripped by fear and sickness, trapped in a closed cycle of endless medications and treatments, caught in a whirlwind of anxiety and perpetual spending that flows into the coffers of power centers amassing billions under the guise of healing. In this ruthless capitalist reality, the true aim of medicine is no longer healing, but the sustainable management of illness. The objective is not for you to recover, but to remain ill for as long as possible. The goal is not to eliminate the disease, but to keep it under control. A cured patient ceases to be a customer, whereas a chronic patient represents a steady stream of income, open to expansion, adjustment, and endless monetization. Take, for instance, type 2 diabetes. Despite the availability of dietary approaches and natural treatments proven to reduce or even reverse the condition, the medical establishment continues to emphasize lifelong pharmaceuticals like metformin. These drugs do not cure diabetes, they merely regulate it. The same is true for heart disease, hypertension, depression, and even cancer. Remarkably, a century-old therapeutic breakthrough, the Rife machine, showed potential in treating cancer but was buried in obscurity. This device was explored in depth in a previous chapter on forbidden technologies. You may watch the full episode via the link in the description and the pinned comment. Within this paradigm of disease as commodity, pharmaceutical firms consistently develop medications that treat symptoms, not root causes. These drugs are then reintroduced in improved versions under the pretext of innovation at a higher price, despite bearing nearly identical chemical compositions to earlier generations. Naturally, this dynamic includes the manipulation of scientific research itself. Companies fund studies that highlight their products, while silencing or disregarding research that points to more effective or affordable alternatives. A revealing investigation published in 2010 in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine, one of the oldest and most respected medical journals, found that over 70% of pharmaceutical researchers had direct financial ties to the drug manufacturers. Leaked documents have also revealed how regulatory agencies, such as the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, have been pressured to approve inadequately tested drugs or to overlook harmful side effects for commercial reasons. One of the most notorious examples is Vioxx, scientific name rofecoxib, developed and launched in 1999 by the German-American pharmaceutical conglomerate Merck for joint pain relief. Despite early studies indicating the drug doubled the risk of heart attacks and strokes, these warnings were deliberately ignored, resulting in thousands of deaths. Internal documents later revealed that some Merck scientists had concealed critical early findings to protect the company's image before regulatory bodies. This is but one case in a global pattern where medications are produced not with the goal of healing, but to serve investment agendas, treating human lives as assets in a profit pipeline that must never run dry. And as political interests align with biological laboratories, a far more disturbing question arises. Are some epidemics and diseases intentionally engineered for goals that surpass mere financial gain? Documents published on WikiLeaks have raised concerns about biological programs designed to reduce population numbers in specific regions or to conduct experiments on impoverished communities without the informed consent of those involved. Among the clearest historical examples of such medical violations is the infamous Tuskegee syphilis study, a stark testament to how medical science can be weaponized for discrimination and unethical experimentation. In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service, in collaboration with the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, initiated clinical trials aimed at studying the natural progression of syphilis. 600 impoverished black men were selected to participate in the experiment. They were deliberately infected with syphilis and left untreated in order to observe the disease's evolution, an act that led to the deaths of dozens due to complications, the infection of several spouses, and the birth of children with congenital syphilis. When journalist Jean Heller exposed the details of the story in the early 1970s, it sparked widespread public outrage and prompted official investigations that condemned these inhumane experiments. In 1997, then-President Bill Clinton issued a formal apology on behalf of the U.S. government during a White House address delivered to survivors and families of the victims. Yet, despite the gravity of these revelations, one of the most unsettling strategies under scrutiny remains the concept of pandemic preparedness and response. This strategy has drawn intense skepticism, particularly among those who follow conspiracy theories and global health policy developments. One of the clearest illustrations of this was the event that took place on October 18, 2019, when the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, alongside the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, conducted a simulation of a global pandemic. The exercise was titled Event 201. It simulated the outbreak of a novel respiratory virus transmitted from animals to humans, which then spread globally, causing massive economic, psychological, and social disruption. Participants included high-ranking executives from pharmaceutical companies, media conglomerates, major banks, as well as international security and health agencies. They discussed strategies for managing the hypothetical outbreak, including controlling online information, enforcing global quarantine measures, coordinating lockdowns across nations, and securing supply chains for medications and vaccines. The simulation also emphasized the roles of private sector and media in maintaining a unified official narrative and in securing emergency funding for pharmaceutical companies and health institutions. What stirred controversy was the eerie resemblance between the Event 201 scenario and the actual events that unfolded just months later with the COVID-19 pandemic. The exercise even predicted a projected death toll of 65 million, a figure that later provoked widespread fear as real infection numbers began to rise. As media censorship intensified during the pandemic, alongside vaccine mandates and soaring profits for pharmaceutical and tech giants, a growing wave of suspicion began to emerge. These suspicions fueled academic debate, intelligence reports, and parliamentary investigations, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom. Questions persisted. Was Event 201 merely a drill or a preemptive blueprint? How could the Gates Foundation and the Davos Forum so precisely foresee a pandemic just months before it occurred? And why did the simulation focus so heavily on controlling media narratives? So, was the COVID-19 pandemic a natural outbreak? Or was it a manufactured crisis, as asserted by several intelligence reports that dismissed the official narrative claiming the virus emerged from a natural mutation and was transmitted from animal to human at a seafood market? Others argue it may have accidentally leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, despite it being one of the most advanced laboratories in China and among the very few in Asia operating under biosafety level 4. Researchers have also pointed fingers at the Fort Detrick Laboratory in the United States, a military facility that serves as a central hub for biological warfare research and is responsible for storing and developing lethal viruses and bacteria. In the summer of 2019, just months before the coronavirus outbreak, the lab was temporarily shut down due to concerns over biosafety protocols, raising suspicions about a possible leak. Chinese authorities later invoked this incident to counter accusations against the Wuhan lab, calling for an international investigation into Fort Detrick. Thus, it becomes evident that the primary goal behind a manufacture of disease may not be limited to financial profit, but control. Pandemics instill fear in populations, justify the imposition of authoritarian measures, and restructure economies to the advantage of powerful global forces. Why would dominant powers need tanks and armies when a single virus can shut down the entire world, cripple its economy, enforce emergency laws, and redraw maps of influence? Are you still unconvinced that we are living through a new form of unconventional warfare, one in which people are subjugated not by military force, but by fear, confusion, and an information blockade? Do you still doubt that we are caught in calculated scenarios, fed repeated messages, and ushered into global strategies disguised as salvation and security? Do you not yet see who truly benefits from these relentless crises? And how, with quiet precision, our world has been transformed into a new order governed by forces that serve the agenda of a single rising figure? Then open your eyes, you'll realize we are spinning in a vortex of conspiracies where truth and falsehood blur, leaving the mind lost in a maze of distraction and uncertainty. For instance, look up at the sky and ask about the long white trails left by some aircraft, streaks that slowly spread across the heavens before fading. They'll tell you it's water vapor from jet fuel combustion, which condenses into ice crystals at high altitudes and usually dissipates within minutes. But many scientists and researchers propose another explanation. What you're seeing is not just water vapor, but the residue of a substance called chemtrail, a chemical or biological agent deliberately released from aircraft. Why? What is its link to human mental health? How does it affect soil and crops? And how is it connected to projects like HARP and the major food corporations poisoning our food supply? In the next installment, God willing, we will delve deeper into the illness industry and attempt to answer these pressing questions.